What's up? What's happening? Welcome back to Lacrosse Now. Travis Eldridge back with you. Big week here on Lacrosse TV for us. Earlier today here on Tuesday announced our CAA Game of the Week schedule for 2023. We got some terrific matchups. One of the first games we have features the Maryland women taking on Drexel. We'll feature the Denver men's team taking on Towson. We got Syracuse men at Hofstra. Schedule is loaded, so make sure you check it out on Watch Lacrosse TV on social media. It's on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, everywhere you follow us. The schedule's up there. So take a look at it now. Going to be a very exciting 2023 college lacrosse season. Here on today's show, we got a lot of exciting news to get to as well. We'll catch up with the preseason player of the year on the women's side, according to USA Lacrosse Magazine. That's Syracuse's Megan Tyrell. Caught up with her last week just prior to finding out that she was the preseason player of the year for USA Lacrosse Magazine. So great interview to preview the Orange's 2023 season. Virginia head coach Lars Tiffany joins us. He caught up with him about a month or so ago, talking about a wide range of topics, including what it's like to try to coach such a talented roster, trying to maximize the roster they have, the talent they have. So great conversation with Virginia coach Lars Tiffany. And we'll kick things off with Scott Ratliff, who just announced his retirement from professional lacrosse earlier this week. Talked about his career, his PLL career, his MLL career, a little bit about his Loyola days as well. So a really fun conversation with Scott, who's one of the really good guys in all of lacrosse. So much fun to talk with him. So good conversation there. So 3 great interviews coming up, but we're going to start with some NLL stuff because an exciting this past weekend in the NLL. We got some good games coming up this week. So I'm going to start things off with 3 things in the NLL to keep your eye on or to know from this past weekend. We'll start with something you should know from this past weekend, and we'll headline this one, the Mighty Mammoth. What a win and what a game we had between Saskatchewan and Colorado this past weekend. Mammoth beating the Rush in overtime 11-10. This one, as close as you can get for a lacrosse game at any level. Game was, Saskatchewan was up by 1 after the first quarter. They were tied at halftime, tied after 3 quarters. Of course, tied at the end of regulation to force overtime. In the extra session, it's Reese Dutch who scores his first goal of the game winner in OT. But Reese Dutch, that was not all he did. A huge game, ends up having the 1 goal along with 6 assists for a 7-point night. And I think the big thing here that I take away from this game is the fact that Colorado, even without their 100-point scorer in Ryan Lee, who, of course, has been injured this entire year. He got injured with the knee injury in the postseason last year. We're not sure exactly when he's going to be back, but the assumption is that at some point here in the latter stages of this year, Colorado will get Ryan Lee back. So the fact that offensively, and this team is doing what they are doing now, the defending champs are showcasing that they are one of the top teams in the West. They're beating Saskatchewan, beating the likes of San Diego. To do that without Ryan Lee and then knowing and hoping that you get him back at the end of the year, I think puts Colorado in a really strong position out west. So this was an impressive win, one of the games of the year so far. And the fact that Colorado is winning these types of games, of course, getting big games from the defense as well, but you're winning these types of games without Ryan Lee, you get him back. I think this is going to be a strong team to keep your eye on. Maybe the favorite in the West. As talented as San Diego is, Colorado's the proven commodity. Won the title last year, and they are right back in the mix again this season. So that was my big takeaway from this past week. Let's move ahead here to this week. And the game of the week in Week 8 is a battle for Western New York between Buffalo and Rochester. Game at Rochester on Friday night. Nighthawks, what a story this is. Who had them as the last unbeaten team in the entire NLL at the beginning of the year? I would go to assume nobody had the Nighthawks as their last unbeaten team in the NLL, but here we are. They come in still unbeaten. And if you're worried about the now married Connor Fields being a different player after, the wedding, the honeymoon, don't worry about it. Fresh off the honeymoon, scores 4 goals this past weekend in another win. So Rochester walks in now unbeaten, top team in the East, but you're playing against a 4-1 Buffalo squad, and this is a really tricky stretch for Rochester. I think, one, we're going to learn a lot about this team from here in the next 4 weeks, because you got Buffalo here this weekend. The following weekend, they play at Halifax. 2 weeks from now, they play Buffalo again, this time on the road, and then they get Halifax at home. So you're playing two of the top teams in the East, both of them, both your games against these teams in back-to-back-to-back-to-back weeks here in this 4-week stretch, this next month stretch. We will learn how for real the Nighthawks are. The win over Toronto, I think, proved to everybody this team's for real. You got to take them seriously. But how they do in this stretch will tell us a whole lot. They go 3-1, 4-0. They may be not only the class of the East, they may be the class of the NLL. They go through this stretch unbeaten or barely scathed. So this is going to be a huge game. Ryan Hartley in goal for Rochester. I don't know if anybody's talking about him enough. This past weekend, 33 saves, 8 goals against in the win over New York. And he's only 1 save behind Matt Vince for the league lead. So he is showing up. He's been tested, seeing a lot of shots, and he's showing up. A terrific start for him. On the other side, Bandits now 4-1. Their only loss came in the opener to Albany. You certainly have to maybe chalk that up to being a bit of a hangover after losing in the championship in the NLL finals last year in the dramatic Game 3. All these guys have played a lot of lacrosse. So I think you chalk that up to, all right, maybe a little bit of a hangover from the end of last season. Well, they're back in as good as ever. Josh Byrne put on an absolute show this past weekend. If you haven't seen some of these highlights, go check them out. He scored 6 of the Bandits' 11 goals, ended up with 9 points in the win over Georgia. A couple of real highlight reel goals as well. One behind the back, just absolute beauty. So Josh Byrne has been terrific. Dane Smith as good as advertised. Buffalo's for real. Cannot wait for this game Friday night, Buffalo at Rochester. Finally, let's finish things up on Saturday, because Saturdays are for the Birds and they're for the Wings. What a blockbuster Saturday in South Philadelphia it is, because the Wings against Toronto game that is in Philadelphia this weekend had to be moved from Saturday night at 7 p.m. to now Saturday at 1 o'clock in the afternoon, because the Eagles are hosting the Giants in a pretty big game across the street in the playoffs, in the divisional round of the NFL, in the Eastern Conference playoffs. So they move the game up. Tailgating will be well underway in Philadelphia for the 8 o'clock kick between Eagles and Giants. So it could be quite the raucous atmosphere for Rock and Wings at the Wells Fargo Center. I mean, if you're not familiar with the stadium complex in Philadelphia, they're right across the street. They share parking lots. They got the Wings are running deals here so that you can pay less for parking and then get a ticket if you have a ticket to the Wings game. And then if you got a ticket to the Eagles game, you go to the Wings game, you start your day off there at the Wells Fargo Center. You keep on tailgating all the way through the Eagles game. It's going to be quite the Saturday in South Philly. And my only question about this one, it should be actually a very interesting game. I'm interested to see how the Rock continue to respond. Kind of a 500 team right now, and I'm interested to see how they do against Philadelphia, who's right there at 500 as well. Two teams that are trying to climb their way up the standings. But my biggest question in all of this is how long it's going to take Matt Rambo to change out of his Wings gear and into Eagles gear to get across the street for the game. I have to think it's going to be less than 5 minutes. This game is going to end. Matt Rambo is going to be in an Eagles jersey, walking across the street and ready to go for the playoff game. So going to be a great atmosphere, I would assume, for Wings and Rock, and go Birds, because the big game is across the street on Saturday night. So anyway, those are my NLL 3 things. Should be a fun weekend in the league here. A lighter week compared to the week we just had in Week 7 in the NLL. Speaking of pro lacrosse, of course, the big news at the end of last week as current member of the Archers, Scott Ratliff, announced that he is retiring here. He will not be playing this year with the Archers. Quite the career he had. Former first-round pick in Major League Lacrosse coming out of Loyola. Has always been one of my favorite guys to talk to across professional lacrosse. I've had the opportunity to really get to know him over the last 5, 6, 7 years since I started here at the network. So thought it'd be fun to catch up with him about his career, what went into his decision to decide now to call it a career and announce his retirement. So had the chance to catch up with him earlier here today. Take a listen. So to talk more about that decision to retire, we've got Scott Ratliff joining us now. Scott, first off, congratulations. I know you got married this fall. That's exciting. Congratulations on this decision. I wonder what all went into it. Why now was the time for you?
Good question. And thank you. Thanks for having me on. And, you know, it's not something that's that I kind of made at the drop of a hat. It's something I've been thinking about probably for, frankly, the last 2 years, 2 seasons. I molded this a little bit last year and decided, you know, to come back and kind of give it one more go. And I did try to stay open-minded to see if something in me would change along the course of the season or even after the season that would lead to me wanting to keep pushing forward. But I guess the best way I could describe it is what I am probably most proud of in my career, and what I think has made me successful, is that I've been completely all in, you know, with professional lacrosse and being a professional lacrosse player. And that's from training to preparation to, you know, time commitment, all of it. And, you know, I was just hitting a point in my life and my career where that was becoming harder to do. And, you know, I think, could I continue to play maybe with a little bit of a different commitment level? Sure, but that's just not who I am. So I wanted to have one more season, treat it the same way, be all in, go all in, and I think kind of step away at that point and pass it along to the next generation.
I was going to say, because I think I was maybe a little caught off guard, because I thought you might be one of the people, just knowing you and your ability to kind of soak things in and want to appreciate the moment, kind of thought you might be one of the people that says, hey, this is going to be it before the season goes through. But you kind of had a feeling last off season. So I wonder, did you appreciate the different steps along the way here this year, knowing it might be your last run through this thing?
I definitely tried to, you know, and I just some of my, you know, closer teammates, I did communicate before the season, like where my head was at and how I was thinking. I think I tried to take everything a little bit slower, and I tried to really appreciate it. But with that being said, like, I feel that I've felt that way all 10 years. Like, it's you're living your dream, and it's such a cool experience. It's such a special thing to be a part of. So sure, like, I had probably had some of those moments where it crossed my mind, you know, I like the All-Star game kind of stands out in my head as being one of those this year. Certainly, you know, the season coming to an end felt a little bit different, but yeah, for the most part, I feel like I am really lucky to have been present through a lot of it. And so this season was really special, but they all were. And so I'm really blessed to have gotten to do that.
You know, I know it's been special for you here since the start of the PLL, having the opportunity to be teammates with Will and Marcus and Adam. Just sum up what that, like, you guys have been pretty close for a while, and sum up what it meant for you guys to actually be on the same team for this stretch run and be part of that group.
Yeah, it was really special. I mean, that's definitely obviously a crew. I think Adam and Will and I, certainly going back to the Cannons days, you know, right at the beginning of our career, and then Adam coming down to Atlanta with me. I mean, basically he's been my goalie for 90% of my professional career. And then certainly, you know, the friendship with Marcus and being a captain and leading with him. It's amazing. I mean, it was a dream come true in 2019 when they announced the rosters and we were all, you know, looking at it and realizing we're getting to play together. But those guys, like that the relationship and that friendship just goes so far beyond lacrosse at this point. So I'm so grateful that I got to play with them, and I'll be their biggest fans now as a supporter. But you know, as far as our friendships go, those are just getting started. So it's really great and cool to get to play with them. It's also, you know, really special to play with you know, to make new friends and to have new teammates come in every year, whether it be young guys or guys coming in and out of rosters. And so the years with the Archers were amazing. I mean, obviously we didn't accomplish our goal of winning a championship, which is a bummer, and it's hard to do in pro lacrosse, as I've learned, but really proud of what we've built and the culture that we built there and the success that we did have. And I think they're in really good shape to be successful going forward. So really proud of that. And those guys you named are, you know, the heart and soul of what that means.
All right, I'm going to take you back. You get drafted by the Boston Cannons in Major League Lacrosse back in 2013. You're a high draft pick. If you're taught, like, young Scott, like, what is he expecting from his professional lacrosse career, and could it have been anything close to how it played out?
Yeah, no way. No way I could have dreamed at that point what this would become. I think that I was naive a little bit to it all. It was a different time in professional lacrosse. There wasn't the same exposure. There wasn't I wasn't super familiar with what the experience would be like, to be honest with you. I wasn't looking at it as my sole career or job at that point. I took another job and I was moving to New York City. So no, at that stage I was excited to be a part of it, but I think I was really unsure about what exactly that meant and what it looked like. And it really wasn't until my third season where, I had kind of looked around the league and I'd gotten to play with guys like Paul and Ryan Boyle and Kyle Sweeney, who had made careers out of lacrosse and done it in different ways, right? But kind of playing as the key component and then building businesses or building different things around it. So I got that example in my early years, and I think it was right around year 2, year 3 where I wrapped my mind around, okay, 1, I think I'm good enough to do this. 2, I think I see a path to a sustainable living, committing to it, and everything just waterfalled. That third season in Boston, we had a great season. I had a great season. I moved back to Atlanta. I was coaching full time, started traveling and doing some of the things that ultimately became Give and Go. And so, yeah, it took a couple years before I think I really understood what this could be, but I am super grateful to have that exposure to Paul, the Kyle Harrisons, the guys who had done it before me. They certainly did kind of lay the groundwork that I looked at and said, okay, I can do this full time. And it's been a hell of a ride for sure.
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned the Atlanta Blaze thing, and I mean that was first really my big introduction when I first got here, and you get traded to Atlanta back in January 2016. What does what you did for the game and your involvement in and around Atlanta and Georgia for the sport of lacrosse mean to you? And now that you see it continue to grow and take off with all the talent down there?
It means everything to me. I think, when I announced on Friday, one of the several things that really overwhelmed me was the amount of specifically young players in Atlanta that I had coached or met or impacted along the way that took time out of their day to text or call or shoot me a DM. I mean, it far exceeded my expectations on that. I've always been really vocal and proud of being from Atlanta and representing that lacrosse community. My friends will tell you, I mean, I always am talking about the best athletes in the world or come from Georgia. And so for our sport, to be able to try to carry that torch has been really cool. And I'm really passionate about the game being taken more seriously and growing and creating more opportunities everywhere. And I think that Atlanta, amongst other cities, is a blueprint for that. Just where it was when I was young, even into high school, to where it is now, it's unbelievable. It's it was non-existent, borderline, when I was a kid. And even in high school, I had close friends who had never seen it, never come watch a game, anything like that. And now you look around down here and it's one of the 2 or 3 most popular sports in every school. Every kid knows what it is. A lot of the best athletes from whatever, football, baseball, basketball are playing lacrosse also, or making lacrosse their focal point. So that's right up there as far as things that I'm most proud of. I couldn't even come close to taking the credit for that. There's so many coaches on the ground that are building these leagues and putting in a ton of time that really drive that. But to be able to give the lacrosse community here somebody to look at that went and did it on the national stage and won a championship in college and got to play pro, I think that's meaningful, and it's something I'm really proud of.
So let's talk about the college thing, because when I was thinking about your career broadly, I think one of the things that always stands out about that Loyola team that you were a part of that won the title in 2012 is every title team gets talked about generally depending on what's going on, but I feel like that team is brought up now more than most other title teams that we talk about in the past because of whether it was your rope unit with you and Josh and company, or just the way in which you guys went about winning a title. That was a special group. What does being part of that and having that be part of your legacy mean to you when you think back on it? And because I'm sure you hear it all the time when people reference that squad.
Yeah, I do. And that's been another part of this I didn't anticipate, but I think being active, playing pro lacrosse has not prevented me from enjoying that, but it's just, I'm still so focused on this other playing goal. And I've really been able to kind of relive and almost reappreciate just how special that was. I mean, I played 10 pro seasons and didn't win a championship. And I didn't win a championship in high school. That's the one time I was able to win one. And you just realize like how hard that is and how unique and special and rare that is. And then to do it on a team that, you know, had so many great players, went 18-1. I mean, for my money, it's in the conversation of one of the best college lacrosse teams ever. Like, I know my guy, Bubba Fairman, you know, his recent Maryland squad going undefeated has something to say about that. But, you know, that's really cool. And it's, in a lot of ways, it really resonates with me because coming from Atlanta, you know, having a little bit of that chip on my shoulder, underdog mentality, and then going to a program that had never won a championship, that came from ranked outside the top 20 and had this really special year and went on a run to win it all. I think it really represents a lot of what I feel like my lacrosse career was about. So, you know, those bonds are forever. We all keep in touch. I'm going to be up at the season opener in Ridley this year. And, you know, it's something that I will never take for granted. You know, my dad lost in 2 national championship games in college. So it's, you know, it's going to be something that I'll cherish for my entire life. And I think now, as I like sit back and just like think about the whole ride and whole journey, I have like an almost a new appreciation for just how cool and unique and hard that was. And I'm really grateful for it.
Yeah, you're 10 years removed now, man. Like, it makes you feel old. I know, like, I'm double-digit years removed from college now. I'm like, man, that seems like yesterday. What's the lasting moment of that whole experience that, like, is etched in your mind that you don't forget?
Ooh, that's a good question. The lasting moment of that experience. You know, I've brought this up before, but I think that the single moment that always comes to mind for me is right at the end of that championship game of seeing my dad. You know, I just brought him up. You know, he played at the University of Maryland. He played in 2 championship games. Like, so much of my lacrosse career was just rooted in following in his footsteps and emulating him. And, you know, both my parents obviously gave me so much belief, but to go play on that same stage that he played on, the confidence that he instilled in me to believe that I and we could do it. Like, I tell the story, at the beginning of that tournament, he filled out a bracket, signed and dated it, got every game exactly right. That 2012 bracket picked us in Maryland to play in the finals and us to win. So I think that is the piece of it that, you know, I could pick a million of them, but it was that moment for me, like just seeing the joy in his face and just realizing like this thing that I had been talking about with him in the backyard since I was 10, you know, just happened. That was really, really special to get to share it with him and do it against his alma mater and all that. It was pretty cool.
So wait, he predicted the whole bracket correctly?
He got the whole bracket. I don't have it in front of me, but I do have it. So maybe I'll send it to you guys for evidence. But yeah, he nailed it.
That's remarkable. They've got like competitions and stuff now. Like, he probably could have won something. He's got to start submitting.
It's crazy too, because he's not a guy who like watches a ton of college lacrosse or sits down and studies it. But he just, you know, that year, those were his 2 teams, right? It was my team obviously being his top choice and Maryland the other one. And so yeah, he picked us all the way, and it was pretty cool. So.
Yeah, man, that's incredible. All right, now that like you don't have to go up against any of these guys anymore, like any time in your career, college, pro, whatever, who was the guy that like when you knew you had that assignment, you were like dreading it all week?
Oh, nope, never. You're never dreading it.
Then who was the guy that got you most excited?
Yeah,
like, who do you look forward to?
I'll reframe it. Yeah, because I mean, I think you want the challenge, but it's changed, right? Different stages of my career. So I go back to college. You know, for us, it was playing in the ECAC. It was those Denver teams. It was guarding Cam Flint was a guy, and Jeremy Noble, trying to figure out which one of them we put the poll on was always a really big deal. And then another name was a special friend of me is Brent Adams. He was at Fairfield in those days, and trying to keep up with him and make him use his left hand was always a tough challenge as well. Then you get early in the pro career, and this list is probably going to be too long, but Jeremy Sieverts was kind of the guy early on. He was like my first kind of big assignment my 3rd year when kind of grabbed the LSM position. And then very quickly it became Paul. And when I think about like my time in Atlanta, Paul's on the Lizards, you know, that was the matchup that I most looked forward to. He was just so hard to cover. His ability to go both hands, shoot on the run from deep with both hands. I mean, he was just a guy where a lot of times I would always just think about taking away what players do best. And with him, that was the hardest to figure out, because he was so good at just taking what you give him and being successful at it. So those 3 years in Atlanta, he was kind of the matchup that that I spent a lot of time thinking about. And then, that's evolved further. I think of guys like Connor Busick, in Florida, and then on the Atlas, we had a lot of really good battles. And then obviously currently there's too many to count, but a guy like Dane Smith on the Chaos, obviously a team that we've bumped into a lot, who's really challenging to cover and for different reasons, obviously in pick play and his passing ability. So yeah, there's been a lot of great ones. And I think the last name, somebody who reached out to me on Friday that meant a lot to me, which isn't a guy that I ever covered one-on-one, was Eric Law. So he was on those Denver teams. We played all 4 years in college and had some crazy battles. And then obviously throughout our pro careers, and we, weren't often running into each other as direct covers, but we both were often vocal leaders of our units and found ourselves in the midst of some heated conversations on a regular basis. And so just to connect with him and hear, that he appreciated those battles as much as I did. And he's another guy who's from like a non-hotbed area who's kind of got an underdog mentality that I have a ton of respect for. So he's just another one when I think about not just 10 years of pro, but 14 years, including college, that literally every step of the way, it was like, if I wanted to be successful, I had to get past him. He's somebody that I really cherish playing against.
You're good with words. So, like, who was the guy you liked trading some trash talk with the most?
Well, Dominique, he became a teammate. We have very different styles. He's always smiling and playful, where I had a tendency to be a little more forward and I think mean at times. But he was somebody that, like, when he was on the machine and I was on the Blaze, we would go back and forth all game long. So those battles were always really fun. Miles Jones and I, we were good friends when he was living here in Atlanta. And I just think because he was such a challenging cover for me, so much bigger and stronger than I am, that maybe to combat that, I would always just go right after him verbally, and just do whatever I could. And he was, he's awesome. He would always give it right back. So those are two guys who I would say stand out as far as some of those chirping battles over the years.
I'm going to tell you a quick story to give you time to think of your favorite on-field moment as a pro. But I'm going to give you mine, because one of like the most surprising and funniest things I saw was when all of a sudden you guys are playing in Atlanta. I think you were playing up in Rochester. It was maybe the first time I saw it, and you started playing man up. And you've got a long pole, a man up, and it just I think Dave Huntley was with your staff at the time, and it just perfectly summed up the way of thinking a little outside the box. They're like, you know what, let's just throw him out there, and it worked, and you guys were effective. So that's one of my favorite moments of you on the field as a pro. Give me yours, because I'm sure it's probably a little bit more sentimental.
Yeah, no, it's another good question. I don't know if it's one I've fully had time to process. That season was really cool. That was Coach Huntley's just plan of letting me play offense and stay on the field was definitely a dream come true. So that's not one moment, but that was a unique and special year for a coach who means an awful lot to me. Yeah, you put me on the spot. There's just so many moments that stand out. I'll give you a couple if that works. Our first game in Atlanta, that was a really hard decision for me to leave the Cannons. We had a really good team, really close culturally. And I wanted to come home, and represent my hometown lacrosse community. And I was coaching full time in the city. And so it meant a lot to me to be a part of that team. And our kind of the first game, our first play, I think Adam ran the ball upfield, threw it to me. I split dodged somebody and threw it to Kevin Rice, and he scored to kind of go up 1-0 on the Bayhawks. So that stands out as just a cool moment where it was hey, this thing might work. And, we had a special player in Kevin, and for Adam to be a part of that play and to do it, for me to be a part of it in front of the hometown crowd and the first ever goal there, that was cool. But I think as I was talking that, I'll give you just two pro moments that I will never forget. And that's two times Adam Gittleman ran down the field and threw me a pass, and I hit a 2-pointer. And I think it might be the only 2 times in my career I hit a 2-pointer shooting high to high. Normally I needed a little bounce help to get those by the goalies. And I think I just got a little extra juice both times that Gitz ran down the field and threw me the ball. So, I wish I could say it was winning this championship or something like that. But, I think that shows, like, it's the relationships and the friendships that you build over the years that are going to stick with you forever. And Adam's a really important one to me. And the way I approach my position, I think, is really similar to the way he approaches his. So those were kind of moments that just for us were really cool, because it's him coming out of the cage and doing his thing that's really different and unique. And then it's obviously me being involved in an offensive play that was a big part of what I did. So, once against the Florida Launch with the Blaze, and then more recently in Baltimore, with the Water Dogs, where he ran over, and they're almost like identical plays and set me up for a 2-pointer. Those were moments that give me chills when I think about them, for sure.
I got to ask, as a player, because the crowd, as soon as the goalie does that, and as soon as Adam starts getting out of the cage like that, the crowd gets pumped. They're excited. Everybody's pumped. Are you excited or nervous when a goalie's doing that?
Well, with Adam, excited, because
okay.
He's as athletic as anybody out there and has such a good lacrosse IQ. Like, very rarely can I ever remember him making mistakes in those moments. So he's a playmaker, and you look at the stats. He's up there in ground balls on our team every year. So you feel good when he goes running out of there. Now, when I'm coaching, or maybe some other goalies I've played with, you're probably feeling a little bit nervous at times. But we had a crazy one in 2015 where I fed him on a cut in the playoffs. So, like, even that moment, which obviously it didn't go our way, that's a special moment to me too. It's just like, what were the chances of having that opportunity to win a semifinal game with your goalie cutting the crease? And I remember after the game, somebody asking me, like, would you regret making the pass? And it was like, that thought hadn't even gone through my head. Like, no, I don't remember. Like, I've seen Adam scored goals against me when he was in Charlotte. He was open. We had a one-on-one with the goalie. So Drew Adams got us on that one. But yeah, those moments of connecting with Gitz, some of the plays with Will Manny would be the other ones, just all-star game moments Will and I have had together. The goal against Team USA where he fed me on a give and go and I threw it behind my back after we'd both been cut. And those moments with those two guys in particular are some of my favorite playing memories, for sure.
I'm glad you brought up the 2015 play in the end of that semifinal, because that may be one of the most chaotic plays in the history of pro lacrosse, especially in that moment.
Try to tell the young guys that if Adam had made that, it would have been, one of the best endings in the history of the game, for sure. And it still was. And then, Drew Adams was our goalie with Gitz on the Archers for those years. So we relived it plenty of times. It was, it was a crazy ending to that season, but it was a pretty cool play.
Well, Scott, it has been a pleasure to watch you play, and it's even better to get to know you here over your time in professional lacrosse. Appreciate all the time, and good luck, and enjoy some normal weekends. I'm sure there's going to be a lot of lacrosse in your future, but away from the field a little bit. Really appreciate the time, man. Thanks so much.
Yeah, thank you. You guys have always just been so supportive, and especially you're just good to me over the years. So I appreciate you. It's been really fun, and if I could just plug the Give and Go Foundation real quick. My chance to kind of stay involved with the game and continue to grow it. So would love for everybody to go check that out, and I'll see you from a beach in Italy this summer, buddy.
Will do. Hey, Scott, appreciate it, and good luck with everything. We'll talk soon.
All right, see you, man.
So big thanks to Scott, and good luck to him as he moves on to the next chapter of his life. Now a married man, so big congratulations to him for that as well. Transitioning to college lacrosse, 2023, fast approaching. Virginia, according to many, the #1 team in the preseason entering this 2023 season. They are absolutely loaded with talent, including the addition of former Stanford linebacker, former #1 overall recruit, Ricky Maizan into the mix. Of course, just added here for this spring semester for Virginia lacrosse. Some of the videos coming out of UVA here in the spring of Ricky Maizan in a lacrosse uniform with a stick are scary. Good luck to the rest of the teams on the Virginia schedule of trying to match up with him at the midfield spot, because he is going to be a handle, like just gigantic, big body, dynamic Dodger. Good luck trying to match up with him. But prior to that news becoming official, had a chance to catch up with their head coach, Lars Tiffany, about a month ago back in December. He was not able to comment at that point on Ricky Maizan, so that's why we don't talk about him. But we talk about a whole lot entering this 2023 spring season, what they learned from the losses to Maryland, and a whole lot more. So take a listen to my conversation with Virginia head coach Lars Tiffany. So let's continue to get ready for the 2023 spring season. We've got Virginia coach Lars Tiffany joining us now. Coach, I want to start with everything that has gone on in the Virginia athletic community over the last month or so. And I just wonder, with the tragic killing of the football players, what's that community and you guys have been going through? What's it been like?
Yeah, losing Deshaun, Lavelle, and Devin has been devastating. The proximity of the violence is what really rattled and stunned our students, certainly our student athletes, but everyone in this community. The community was impacted more than I expected. The outside community, meaning the non-UVA. It's just, these type of tragedies, unfortunately, occur every day in this nation. And until we realize that this excessive gun use, we have to make this a public health mandate as opposed to a political discussion. That the type of violence here is just was unfortunately the norm in our country. And unfortunately it was Charlottesville's turn to really be up close and personal to this, and so sad, and to see it impact three beautiful young men. And it's just, how this community, we are UVA strong, but boy, we were devastated for a couple of days there, and in our hearts, we still are. I've seen our team really struggle at times handling this. Unfortunately, we have incredible support here. Our sports psychologists, that we have 3 here in the athletic department, have been phenomenal. George Morris, the athletic department chaplain, he came and spoke to our team with wonderful words to help guide us through this tragedy. But it's something that we're never going to forget. Deshaun, Lavelle, and Devin, and gosh, I hope some point that this can be just this is a health issue, and that this nation really has to come to grips in addressing how many guns are allowed to be throughout our nation.
I was going to ask, how are you and the team taking it? Because, as you mentioned, obviously it's the whole Charlottesville community that's affected. But I mean, inside that athletic department, you're passing these guys in the hallway. You're lifting weights in the same spots. That's tough. It's really tough.
Yeah, and when we walk by a football player or a football coach, you feel like you gotta give him a hug, or at least a fist bump, and just there's got to be a touch point. Hey, we're thinking about you. We're here for you. We can't take that pain away, but know that we're going to stick together. It's a couple of our men knew their men, growing up, going to first year dorms, what we call freshman dorms here. One of our men, John Islar, played football for a year here. He did both, and now he plays just lacrosse. And he was able to share some stories about 2 of the men who've been here for a while, Deshaun and Lavelle. He was able to share stories about those men with us, which was wonderful, right? Just keeping their memories alive, makes, can reduce the pain a bit. But yeah, it's something that's, it haunts us. It's really, really hard. And, and we move forward, but they're always going to be with us.
For sure. There's no good transition. So let's talk a little bit on the field now. You guys are coming out of the fall. We're talking here in December. Where's your feel about this team coming out of the fall and looking ahead to the spring?
I will tell you, I'm feeling good, not great. I want to feel great. Now, you could say, well, coach, it's the fall. It's a chance to put in your younger men, to introduce the first years, which is a really exciting class. And getting them caught up to speed, spending a little bit more time with them. Meanwhile, we have 7 fifth years. We've never had that many. A couple of years ago, it was Doc Zakin and Jared Connors came back for a 5th year. Last year, it was Jack Peel, Regan Quinn, and Matt Moore. This year, 7. So it's really exciting to have this seasoned veteran experienced group back. And so as a coaching staff, all right, do we need to do hundreds of 1v1s with the older guys? But the younger guys do need those reps and experiences. So we try to find a balance of, for the 5th-year guy that there's a lot going. They got a lot going on with their master's programs, which depending on the program can be exceptionally more difficult than what they experience their first 4 years here. Certainly the MS Com program, the commerce. But it's just trying to find that right balance. And I felt like we were good. Now we had a lot of injuries. And so the cohesiveness and getting to see our older guys with the younger guys didn't happen as much as we wanted. Fortunately, most of those injuries by mid-January will be done. And those guys will be good to go. So there's this thought that we could go from about 33 healthy bodies to 46 healthy bodies, just getting the calendar to January 15. And and I think we're on pace there. And that's what we should look like. But I'll admit too, there's a little something more that as a coaching staff, we want out of this group. And so it was a good fall, not a great fall. And my phrase to them has been, fellas, we look really, really good on paper. What we're bringing back and what we have coming in with the new acquisition, this is as talented as a team as we've had here in Virginia during the tenure of Kip Turner, Sean Kerwin, and Lars Tiffany. We're as loaded as we've been on paper, but we got to get it done on the field. So we can't just look good on paper. And that will certainly begin as we jump together in mid-January and move forward. That'll be, really trying to crank this up a little bit more in terms of our intensity and our drills and our preparation.
Yeah, you mentioned it because, I look up and down at what you have coming back, and I think most people do across the country and the lacrosse landscape, and you go, this team is just loaded because of what we've seen all these guys do in college. It's not often you've got a team coming back where you look and you go, I know what most of these guys have done at this level, at this stage. This team should be really good. What kind of pressure, though, does that put on maybe you guys as a coaching staff? Because you see what everybody else sees. On paper, it looks awesome. The pressure of how do we maximize that and make sure we hopefully live up to that potential?
Yeah. Again, we talk of pressure as a privilege. How wonderful it is that we pursue together as a team an objective, a national championship, that we pursue a level of achievement that other people care about, that the lacrosse world, not the biggest world out there, but it's something that matters to a lot of people, and that what we do matters and brings joy or pain to others. And that's wonderful. How lucky are we? And so the pressure is a privilege. And to dive into your question a little differently, the challenge now for the coaching staff is how hard do we go? It's if you're coaching older guys who've been through these campaigns, who understand what their bodies need and takes, you try to trust them a little bit more. But you've got to have that desperation and hunger for every loose ball. And does that come from trust, or boom, here we go, 2v2 prison GBs? Do we drill it? Do we continue to repeat it? And I think as a coach, we only know how to drill, and repeat. So we're going to get after it here in the preseason and ensure that attitude, that hunger is there.
A guy that you do have coming back here in your goalie in Matthew Nunes. I mean, it's not often you see a freshman step in and start for a team that's a top 5 team in the country. What's that transition like from first year where he's thrown into the fire and just kind of learning as he goes to now having a full year of experience in what you expect as a sophomore?
Yeah, we're seeing that next step. But I want to make sure I go back. His first step was a really good first step.
Yeah.
We don't point to any game that we lost and said, yeah, you could see some inexperience between the pipes. There's none of that. I've had a couple of alums come up to me and say, yeah, a couple of those games got away from you. It's probably, just having a freshman in the goal. And I look at them going, and I'm quizzical, huh? The those losses had nothing to do with the goalie. There's a bunch of guys in front of him who weren't playing very well. Matt Nunes gave us real consistency. Now, sir, some games he was playing at a really high level, where we were able to shut down some really strong offenses. How well he did against Notre Dame, how well he played against North Carolina, especially the game here in Charlottesville, and certainly the High Point game. As a team, we did not play well against High Point. We were fortunate to beat them by 1 goal, and Matt Nunes made saves throughout the entire game, including with 20 seconds left to preserve that 1-goal lead. So he gave us a consistency, and then some days. We didn't see this really ever during his first year here, which is phenomenal for a young man. And now the second year, the progress, the development, the enhanced film work with Coach Turner. He and Kip spend a lot of time together now, sort of really razor focusing and fine tuning some of the things that he wants to get better at. But man, what a stalwart! What a rock back there that understands our 10-man. He has a really good feel for that. It's interesting when we have a guy, Alex Rode, who is MVP of the Final Four in 2019 and a starting goalie for 2 national championship teams. And yet we bring in a freshman in who improved us in the goal in certain areas. Alex is a phenomenal stopper and a phenomenal goalie. Matt is actually, more confident in the clear. Matt's more confident in a ride. He understands when to get out of the goal and when to stay in the goal in our pressure ride. So we're really, really lucky to have Matt Nunes here coming back for a second year.
Offensively, everybody knows about Connor Schellenberger being back and Xander Dixon and some of the pieces there. You add in another offensive talent and Truett Sunderland as a freshman. How do you balance all the different talent you're going to have on that end of the field?
I know there is an embarrassment of riches, one could say from afar, but actually the 3 men you mentioned, could be a starting attack unit for us. We're trying to figure out, how do you define who should be a starter on attack versus who should be an offensive midfielder specialist? And, we can look at it and say, well, what makes sense for a fast break? If there's transitions, who do you want on the field? You could look at it from a frame of reference. Well, maybe you just put your best goal scorers on attack. Your 3 best goal scorers should be near the goal. Simple, right? For us, we have a different metric because riding is so important to us. And I don't think we quite got to where we want to be as a riding team last year. We've had better years. And so we're looking at, the options that we have that obviously include Griffin Schutz and Peyton Cormier, along with Xander Dixon, Truett Sunderland, and Connor Schellenberger, and saying, what's the right mix in terms of creating pressure with our ride? And so that will influence the decision, because you're right. We have a lot of talent here. And deciding who's going to be an attackman, who's a midi, is one of the things that we have to make a decision on.
There obviously has to be some hunger after, obviously, the Maryland game at the end of the year, but I also probably think the Maryland game in the middle of the year, where you guys look at those games like, that was the team all year, and we didn't quite compete the entire way through 60 minutes like we would have liked. What were the learning experiences from both of those losses to Maryland last year that maybe carry over?
There's definitely a lot of strategical information that we picked up from it. And what I'm really enjoying about this rivalry is it's going both ways. We're watching, and learning a lot from Maryland and what they did offensively last year with Coach Benson's offense. Very few play calls, interesting type motions, free flowing. If an offensive possession lasted, I know it's an 80-second shot clock, but, before you really set up your offense, maybe there's 50, 55 seconds. Yeah. But they're attacking you 4 or 5 different times within those 55 seconds, never giving patience. And then as a coaching staff saying, hey, can we learn from this? Look what they're doing. Look at the type of pressure they're putting on our defense. And then watching them defensively, how stalwart they were. How difficult it was to run by them and create slides and create mismatches or 2v1s on the backside. And certainly the way they clear the ball is very efficient. So what has happened here is, we've been studied by our opponents, and now it's an opportunity for us to do a little bit more studying of others. You get in that conundrum, right? Where when you've had success, which is fantastic to have, what do you change the next year? It's so easy to say, don't change anything. Whether it's from your sock color to your warm-ups to your man-up plays. Maybe you shouldn't change anything, but you got to change. You don't want to be Eastman Kodak, right? And staying stiff with your industry. You got to keep moving forward. And so it's interesting. But now, certainly coming off the loss, and especially the way we lost, we got drilled. We got beat up by a very, very good Maryland team. But we also got beat up by Duke too. So we gotta look at some of that is, a bit of like the emotions or the cultural, or are we just going to be, we're going to be hyped up and excited to play when things are going our way? What about when things aren't going our way? What are we going to do at halftime? Our 2019 team, things didn't go our way a lot.
Yeah.
On and off the field. and that team never stopped. That just kept fighting. And so we got to get a little bit of that. We got to get that back for sure. But yeah, it's a cerebral thing of learning and growing, and opportunities to grow certainly come from the sting of losses. You mentioned, do you have superstitions? Like, are there things that you've picked up in those winning times? Not really too superstitious.
Okay.
Just superstitious on pouring your heart out there and being a good teammate. Be a good teammate and give us everything you got. That's the only thing I'm superstitious about. If you don't do that, I'm feeling like we're gonna have some bad luck.
Yeah. Hey, that's fair. I'll leave you with this, because we had Scott Marr on a couple weeks ago, and he's one of your coaches along with you with the Haudenosaunee Nationals team. And he gave us some insight that Zed Williams, one of the former players there at Virginia, somebody I know you have a good relationship with, is playing long pole. I have to wonder, like, what that's like to watch a guy who's one of the elite offensive players in the world pick up a long pole and say, this is what the team needs, and this is what I'm going to do. Exactly.
I know. I chuckle because it's not about me, but you do wonder how many people are like, what an idiot Lars is. You're going to say, arguably, the top guy, if not certainly the top 5 offense players in the world, and take him out of that position and put a 6-foot stick in his hand. But there's a couple things here. First of all, Zed is really excited to do this. Our first training camp up in Buffalo, New York, he and I had a lot of time to talk. He's wanted to try this for a long time. He likes the idea of a new challenge. And I think he knows he'll become a better offensive player playing defense and understanding how it is to defend elite Dodgers and elite offensive players. So first of all, he's excited about this. This didn't take, a lot of persuasion. Second, the dynamics of the Haudenosaunee, of the people that I've been given a gift to lead here in the 2023 World Games. Superb offensive talent, tons of box lacrosse experience, not a lot with that 6-foot stick in our hands. And so it's an absolute need. And so when Zed showed up for the first tryout that he could be at, he kind of we did double takes as coaches. Like, he's 6'2", and a half, 250 pounds right now. And he moves really well. And he's been practicing with that 6-foot stick. And like, okay, all right, we have that prototypical close defenseman that you need to compete at the highest level. Now we got to find a couple more, and we have a couple more. But if you were going to build something in your laboratory, he would be Zed Williams. And he's legit 250 pounds, and it's all muscle, and he moves laterally much better than you'd expect. And he just needs experience, but he's it's really, really, really exciting.
I think it's so freaking cool, and I think it's a lesson to every lacrosse player out there. If this guy, who's one of the elite guys in the world, can do it, then anybody else who's on a team that needs somebody, it's just the perfect example of what he seems like as a teammate.
Yep, and you're exact. Whatever his nation needs, whatever his people, whatever his teammates need, that's it. He will do it. But like I say, he's excited about this. He's looking forward to a new challenge. Range, giving himself range. David Epstein's book, Range. Highly recommend.
Awesome stuff, Lars. Coach, we really appreciate the time as always. Can't wait to see you guys back in action this spring. Good luck. Enjoy the Christmas and the holiday season here, and we'll catch up sometime here closer to the spring.
Yeah, certainly. Merry Christmas, everyone. Enjoy these holidays, and I know we're all excited about 2023 getting back in the field.
Thanks, Lars. So we'll stay in the ACC as we continue to preview this 2023 spring season, and we'll go up to Syracuse, where they have the preseason Player of the Year, according to USA Lacrosse Magazine on the women's side, Megan Tyrell. She was just named that late last week. It was just after we had a chance to record an interview with Megan looking ahead to this spring season. So we don't talk about her being the preseason Player of the Year, according to USA Lacrosse Magazine. But we do get you ready for the season, talking about all things Orange, what it's like coming off a Tewaaraton finalist season. So here's my conversation with Megan.
This segment of Lacrosse Now is brought to you by Watch Dingo.
We're now joined by Syracuse's Megan Tyrell, back for a grad student year. Megan, was there ever any question you weren't going back to school for one more run at this?
Not really in my mind. When you're kind of done with your 4 years and like being granted that 5th year, it's kind of hard to say no and pass that up to get another chance to play with your team, play with some of your best friends, at a top school. So there wasn't really a doubt for me.
Yeah, and I have to think playing with your sister at least another year has to help too.
Oh, 100%. She was like one of the main reasons that I came back.
So you're a Tewaaraton finalist last year. And I mean, look, you obviously as a team want to accomplish even more things. But when you walk into college, I don't know if your expectations is I'm going to be a Tewaaraton finalist at the end of a season. But that was the reality for you. Well, when you look back at that, what's that like?
I mean, it's kind of surreal. Tewaaraton is like the most prestigious thing that you could ever be nominated for, selected for. So being able to have that experience and have that opportunity I was so honored. And it really is just surreal, honestly.
With this team, I look at some of the preseason rankings and you guys are up there as you should be, but I feel like the expectations for everybody isn't like Final Four national championship. I know it is for you guys in your own locker room. What do you guys feel like as you guys get ready to go back on campus here in the next week or so?
I mean, we're confident, we're coming in and, we have some statements to make coming into the season. But as far as preseason rankings and all that stuff kind of goes, that's just kind of preseason. You'll actually see what happens out on the field. So we're kind of just keeping our heads straight and kind of looking forward to our first game.
What's the second year and now full season under Kayla Trainer been like, looking back at the fall and now just getting ready for another season?
Yeah, having Coach Trainer at the helm, she's been, super determined in what she wants to do. And, we've been following every one of her footsteps along the way. And I think we're evolving as a team under her, kind of learning her coaching style and moving forward with it. So it's definitely awesome to be able to play for her again.
How crazy is it to play for her last year and then watch the World Championships this summer and watch what she's doing on the field on that stage for Team USA?
It's crazy, to see how she plays, the way she kind of sees the field. And it's cool to have her coach us and try to explain that to us and see things kind of how she sees things or kind of helps us see things. So just watching her play is just amazing. I've been watching her forever throughout her college career at Syracuse, and just seeing her at Worlds and her final run with US was just, it was full circle. And now to be coached by her, it just feels kind of full circle for me.
Yeah, for sure. You wore Team USA colors this summer as well in the World Games. What was that experience like, and what did it do for your career?
It was so, playing for US, wearing the red, white, and blue, it's just such an honor to represent your country. And especially with the sixes format, it's such a fast-paced game, and it's such a, a fast way to play lacrosse, basically. You're kind of up and down the field nonstop for a couple quarters, and I really enjoyed the game. The experience in Alabama was awesome. It was so great to meet all these different people from different countries and kind of see even different sports just around the campus that we were at. So it was a really awesome experience, and I'm really looking forward to see where sixes goes.
Yeah, what is your takeaway from sixes? Like, what did you love? What did you not love? What was in between?
I mean, the pace of it itself, it's just kind of like on the run. You know, you're coming up the field. You do have time to kind of like work it a little bit, but it's more of just kind of get to the net, a couple passes, a couple picks here and there. There is a, you know, skill to it and a way that you should go about it. So being able to really figure that out and see teams be successful with it, it's a lot of learning on the go kind of right now, but I think it has like such a bright future.
Yeah, and it was fun to watch. Like you blink and you might miss 2 goals. So like you got to pay attention the entire time. Somebody else that was on your team last year that no longer is Sam Swart, but she played field hockey this fall. And I have to imagine you probably supported your former teammate throughout the fall. What's it like watching a player that you were with on the lacrosse field now do it in a different sport and like play a role in a team that was in the NCAA tournament?
Sam is just like not only an amazing person, like she's an amazing athlete in general. You know, on the lacrosse field, you saw her. She was up and down the field all the time. So, and we've always known that she loved field hockey. She would always hit the ball with her like lacrosse stick, like it was a field hockey stick during practice. And being able to watch her kind of finish that part of her life too was just awesome. And I'm so glad that she had the opportunity, and so cool to see that team do so well throughout the tournament. Or throughout the season more so. Yeah,
no, for sure. So I'm going to go a slightly different direction here because obviously your emergence in the college game, you and your sister, kind of coincided with the end of the Game of Thrones era. And I have to imagine the House Tyrell stuff like has gone like off the rails. Like how many, like when at its peak, like how many people are making Game of Thrones references around you and your sister?
I think there was a lot, like at the point where people were talking about the show a lot. I personally have only watched a couple episodes of the show. I think Emma actually likes the show. So I didn't really understand the reference, but I knew it was from Game of Thrones. But yeah, no, it was heard and used a lot.
Yeah,
over like the last season or 2.
That's a great. So you've only watched a couple episodes. You're like a holdout.
Yeah, I don't know. It just I started watching it and then I kind of just stopped watching it. I got like busy with stuff and just never really picked it back up.
Yeah, it's cool. I was a holdout for a long time, and then my wife was like, "We're gonna sit down and you're gonna watch." And then I got into it and watched the whole thing and caught up just in time for the finale. But there's a lot of attention you got to pay. If you don't have time, it can be a lot. It's daunting of a task to start from the beginning. Back on the lacrosse field, do you have a favorite accomplishment that you've had throughout your career?
Oh, I don't think so. As far as like accomplishments, I kind of like get really excited over like little things like a caused turnover or a ground ball in the middle of the field, like on a ride or something. I get really excited about those, but I can't think of like a specific moment where I was like, oh, like this is just like the best that there was.
So do you have like a favorite? You mentioned some little moments. Do you have like a favorite play that like in your mind is something that stands out that maybe doesn't stand out to like the broader audience when they watch the game?
Oh, I don't think so, honestly.
Okay. All right. Do you have a favorite game?
From last season?
No, from your career.
Probably when we beat Maryland my sophomore year before COVID.
That was a big one for the program, and unfortunately, the season then came to an end. But a big win.
That was tough afterwards. That game was just there was like a lot that went into it, and you know, to be able to go down to Maryland and come out with the victory for that one was just special for us. So that's probably one of my favorite games that I've had.
Well, we hope for many more memorable moments for you guys here in 2023. I know you're getting ready to go back to campus there at Syracuse. So good luck here in the preseason. Can't wait to see you guys back on the field. Thanks so much for the time.
Yeah, thank you.
So big thanks to all our guests this week. Great conversations with Scott Ratliff, Lars, Tiffany, and Megan Tyrell. Hope you enjoyed those conversations. A reminder, we got live lacrosse for you this weekend on Lacrosse TV. PBLA Game of the Week. Saturday, 7 p.m. Eastern time, we've got the Salem Mayhem, our first look at them in our Game of the Week slate. They take on the Elmira Renegades up in the southern tier of New York. That game in Elmira, you can see it right here, 7 p.m. Eastern time on Watch Lacrosse TV. Just head to watchlacrossetv.com. That's how you can watch that game on Saturday night. As for now, that's all the time we have for you this week. We'll see you right back here next week.